Quality, understanding quality, is really core to great leadership, great teamwork, and inspiring conversations. Well, why? What is quality? Is a Rolex watch quality? Is a Brooks Brothers suit a quality suit? How about a Mercedes? Is that a quality car? The answer to these questions is, it depends. So what is quality at work? We're going to dive into that topic in this video. I'm Shawn Kent Hayashi, and I am passionate about the topic of quality. Come along with me on this journey, and I will help you to become passionate about quality too. I work with organizations that want to create high-performing teams and inspiring leaders. I asked before, a Brooks Brothers suit, a Rolex watch, a Mercedes. Most people would immediately reply, oh yeah, that's a quality car, that's a quality suit, that's a quality watch. But I say, wait a minute. If we're hiring a welder or maybe a crane technician, and we give them a Rolex watch, a Mercedes, and a Brooks Brothers suit, are they going to be able to do their job well? No. Those are not the tools that someone would need in order to do a great job welding. They need welding tools. So quality is really about understanding the requirements, the needs of an individual or a team, and giving them, providing them, supplying them with what they need in order for them to meet the needs of their work. Let's imagine that you and I just started to work, same day, brand new, we're rolling up our sleeves, and we're working in a restaurant that is known for serving amazing grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup for lunch. It's our first day on the job. And now I want you to imagine that someone comes in and says to us, just go in the kitchen and start making grilled cheese sandwiches. Go in the kitchen, start making soup. Are you and I going to be able to make the grilled cheese sandwich the way that this restaurant is known for serving it? Not without some training, right? We need to understand how is the bread prepared? What type of cheese? How many pieces of cheese? Are there some special nuances? Do we maybe put a smear of a really yummy mustard on that sandwich? Is that part of what makes it so unique? If we don't know those things, if we haven't been trained, we're not going to be able to produce the grilled cheese sandwich and the tomato soup the way our customers have come to expect it. So we would need training that's really customized to our current learning level. What do I already know about using a grill or a griddle to make a grilled cheese sandwich? What do I already know about pureeing tomatoes to get them to the right consistency for the tomato soup? If I've gotten fantastic bread and tomatoes that really look wonderful, we can say that I'm in great shape for doing this next step in my work, so I can keep the continuation of my work going because I've gotten the right inputs to what I need in order to do my job, making my grilled cheese sandwiches and my tomato soup so that they can be served for lunch. So quality is meeting the needs, meeting the requirements of the person that we're passing the baton to from our work. Now we can think about this like this. All work is a process. There are sequences, there are steps involved in doing our work. And when I receive work from someone, I'm looking at, does that meet the needs that I have for the way I might take that, shape it, weld it, in order for me to pass it on to the next person. And so each of us has requirements, a standard, a guide for what it looks like to do quality work, successful work in the scope of what we're focused on. When we think about quality, it's so important to understand the needs, the requirements of each step in our workflow process, and to be able to communicate them, to be able to articulate the sequence, the steps, the needs, the tools that we might need, and the specific know-how, maybe even the specific language that we need in order to communicate effectively. The more we know something, the greater the likelihood that we have a distinction. We have phrases, terms, acronyms that we might use to indicate a level of precision about something that we're doing in our workflow process. In our workflow process, the step-by-step sequence of how work gets done, someone's passing things to us. So in this example, someone might be procuring the bread, the cheese, the special spread, and I come into my work and find that those things are in the refrigerator ready for me to start using. But if there's a problem with the bread, if there's a problem with the tomatoes, and I don't have the right tools to do my job, we could say that the quality process broke down there. So there was a nonconformance, if you will, to the expectations or the requirements if I got moldy bread and rotten tomatoes. That doesn't work. We want to make sure that we're communicating very clearly with the people who pass work to us, so the people who are passing the baton to us. We need to make sure that we can speak in their language and not use acronyms or terms, phrases that they don't understand when we're describing what it is that we need in order for us to do our work well. And likewise, when we're passing the baton to whoever's next in the workflow process, we need to ask them questions to ensure that we really understand how are they using what I'm giving them. What are the needs that they have? And to the degree that we could speak in 8th grade language with people when we're passing batons back and forth, the clearer, the greater the likelihood that we're creating a workflow process that's going to produce consistent results. In training on the first day in my job, I might learn that my workflow process begins with spreading butter on the bread. So as I'm spreading the butter on the bread, I'm to look to make sure that the bread is in good shape. And the last step in my workflow process related to the grilled cheese sandwich might be to put the grilled cheese sandwich on a plate, cut it in a particular way, put a pickle on the plate, and then put that plate on the counter so that the servers can take it to the customer. And the steps in between those would be my scope, the scope of my work, the workflow process, the sequence of what I'm doing, and the scope from the beginning step that I take to the point where I'm passing the baton to someone else. In this case, I'm passing the baton to a server who's now responsible for delivering that to the person who's waiting for the great grilled cheese sandwich. The people who we're passing the baton to in our work would be called our internal customers. And the people who are using the end product would be the organization's customers. Now, you might be in a workflow process where you are literally passing the work right to the customer, the external customer. Or you might be in a situation where your work goes to an internal customer or several internal customers before the end user customer gets the work produced by your organization. All work is a process, and all workflows have customers. So we may or may not have internal customers. We may or may not know our external customers. Imagine this scenario. You speak English, and it's your first day on the job, and you need to be trained in how to make the grilled cheese sandwich and the tomato soup. And the first thing that happens is you're put in front of a video And you're told that this video is going to teach you how to make the grilled cheese sandwich and the tomato soup. But as soon as you start listening to the video, you realize it's in French. And there's not really someone speaking or showing you, they're just slides. And those slides are literally all in French and you don't speak French. How effective is that conversation, that training for you? It's not. We would say this is not an example of a quality conversation or a quality training experience because it's not resonating with the person for whom it's intended. So as managers, as leaders, it's our responsibility to make certain that our conversations that we're having with employees and people for whom we are responsible for their work, that we're speaking their language and that we're teaching them step by step the internal acronyms, the internal language that we might use in particular parts of our work. So in our engineering department, for example, we might have certain phrases and terms that we use to convey complex concepts. But if we're talking to someone outside of our engineering department who's not trained in those, we want to make sure that we're not speaking over their head. That would be like speaking French if you don't know French. When we work for an organization that has a stake in the ground about producing very high quality products and services, we're in a great position to be able to really think through all the steps in the process, in the workflow. And there are many types of organizations and types of work where distinguishing at a very fine level. So if we're building something huge, when we're building something huge that is very detailed, many complex steps involved in it, we might have somebody in a project manager role to oversee all the pieces of the various workflow processes and how and when they will be coming together. So imagine for a moment, many, many years ago, I worked for an organization that created the software for project managers to use. And one of our customers was Disney World, Disney in Florida. Think about that. And when the Animal Kingdom was being built, they used this very complex software system to plan the building of that theme park. So I want you to just imagine the levels of complex, the layers of language and how people would have different languages for the areas of specialty that they focus on. Even so, we still need to be able to pull the camera lens back far enough so that we can communicate clearly across all the different disciplines that are involved in managing, building a large, complex workflow process. Now, we can also have a different type of organization, one that's a service organization. Maybe we're not building something tangible, but instead what we're doing is providing knowledge, know-how. Maybe we're consulting. There's still a flow, there's still a process to our work. There's still milestones in our work and conversation. There's points where we need to make sure people are understanding the concepts and the ideas so that we're building a framework that people understand and can apply in their work. So whether you're building something that's concrete, big, huge, or even something concrete that's small, or whether you're building a conceptual idea, a framework, a service that is about showing up and serving someone in a meaningful way, all of those have a workflow process, a sequence to the work that includes steps and milestones and benchmarks And there might be someone who's playing the role of project manager who's overseeing how all of those workflow streams come together and what the timelines will be around that, so that we're making sure that we're communicating clearly together and creating quality, meeting the expectations along the way in all of those baton handoffs that have to occur in order for us to do something like build a theme park or design a management philosophy in our organization, a cultural norm, and ensure that people in our work culture understand the expectations of the skills and the norms that they need to use in order to do their work. So we could say that a quality conversation is one in which we're ensuring that we're meeting the needs of the person or people, the group that is listening to us. There are some core topics that fit under the umbrella of deeply understanding quality. And when a person deeply understands quality and how to integrate it into our work, great things happen. And so I want to introduce you to some of the language of quality now, so that we can take your understanding a little bit deeper. And we have to start with this idea of understanding our own accountabilities. So what am I accountable for? And what are the requirements of each, or the needs, we could say the needs, right? What are the requirements or needs of each step in my own workflow process? So mapping our workflow, mapping the sequence of how we do what we do in order to produce a consistent result. Another phrase that you will hear sometimes when people are talking about quality is zero defects in the workflow process. What's zero defects in the workflow process? That means we were able to consistently do the work without a problem, without an issue. And when we get to zero defects, we could say we are at very high quality. That means we met the needs of the workflow process. So what percentage of what we're producing are we willing to have be not up to par? Think about safety. We want zero defects when we are creating safety procedures, safety processes, because we don't want someone to get hurt. Learning how to use tools like spreadsheets and tracking lists to help us analyze where in our workflow processes things are going very smoothly and where there might be some hiccups, where there might be some issues. Being able to collaborate, being able to have very effective conversations with the people who are passing the batons to us and with the people who we pass the baton to. This is collaboration. This is what we talk about teamwork. So the more that I understand the accountabilities and the needs of the people who I pass batons back and forth with, the greater the likelihood we are to be able to work together to solve issues as they come up. There is a workflow process associated with payroll. For example, getting you your paycheck, that's a workflow process. How many instances of nonconformance, how many times would you be willing to accept a defect in your paycheck? This is one of those workflow processes where you probably want it to be error-free every time, right? You want your paycheck to be correct. You want it to be on time. You want it direct deposited in the right account. This would be an example of a workflow process where there might be several different types of errors that could occur, but we want to set a standard for ourselves. What's our quality standard as it relates to our payroll process? We want to get every piece of our payroll process correct every time. That's going to be our standard. That's what we're going to aim for. And we're going to be willing to talk about or look at those places where perhaps something did not happen correctly so that we can create a permanent. The phrase that you will sometimes hear used is a corrective action. So a corrective action is something that we do to fix a long-term solution as opposed to a Band-Aid or a stopgap measure as it relates to the workflow process. There's another phrase in quality management that I want you to be aware of, and that is price of nonconformance. In other words, what does it cost us when we don't meet our standard? So for example, with payroll processing, if we don't meet our standard of 0 defects, what's the cost to that? And we could begin to track the instances where we're not conforming to our standard and look at the cost in terms of time, dollars, people resources, any of those kinds of things where there is a cost associated with nonconformance, so that we understand. And this is important when we're looking across an organization at multiple workflow processes. We might discover that we have 3, 4, 8 workflow processes where we want to roll up our sleeves and dig in and get some quality improvement around them. And we might prioritize which one or ones we're going to focus on, for example, based on the price of nonconformance. If it means that we might lose some significant customers if we don't conform, we need to pay very close attention to that issue. You might hear someone use the phrase improving supplier relationships or improving customer relationships. Our vendor relationships, our supplier relationships, our customer relationships are all based on communication and integrity, speaking truth, helping people to really understand the expectations of the accountabilities, the workflow, the scope, the accountability that I have. What is mine to make decisions on? What is mine to problem solve around? When is it my responsibility to make sure that I'm communicating to someone else if I see that there are issues? So if I know that I report into, let's say, Tom. Tom is my boss, and it's my responsibility to make certain I'm communicating with Tom if I'm seeing some hiccups, challenges, problems in my workflow process. It's also important for me to let Tom know if I see that there are some changes on the horizon. Maybe I noticed a trend. Maybe I see something coming. It's my responsibility to make sure in a weekly conversation or maybe even daily conversation that I'm keeping Tom updated on what the patterns and trends are that I'm noticing, because Tom's not doing the work I'm doing, so he might not be seeing the same thing. And even if Tom is doing some of the same thing, he might not be working with the same internal customers or external customers. He might not be seeing things from the same landscape that I am. So I owe it to the person I report into to keep that person updated on what I'm seeing, experiencing. And they also owe it to me to keep me aware of when change is on the horizon and to help me develop the skills, the ability, the know-how to do what's coming next. So I've been talking about what it means to manage quality. And each one of us is responsible for managing quality in the work that we do individually. So while our organization might have a quality department, the quality department isn't sitting next to me every day looking at what I'm doing. I am. So this is why I've got to make sure that I own the idea of, hey, I'm passionate about creating quality in my work. I believe that every one of us wants to do a good job. Every one of us wants to do our work well. And as a result, the better that we understand what quality is, what it means to meet the needs and requirements of our work, and the better the communication flow around that, the greater the likelihood that we're going to feel successful in our work. If I want to regularly create quality outcomes in my work, I'm going to track where are things going well in the workflow process. What's working, what's consistently working well, where are we being successful? But I'm also going to want to have the spirit of curious learner, willing to notice what's off, where are things a little wonky. I'm going to want to track what are the patterns where something might be off or wonky or out, not meeting requirements. And we could call this way of thinking using prevention, preventing future problems, not from the kind of place, not from the policing it kind of place, but from the curious learner, let's be solutions focused. Let's see if we can see if there are any patterns that are triggering. We get the right people in a conversation so that we can talk about how to improve. And so having a spirit of continuous improvement, this idea of continuous improvement, continually looking at how could we get even better than we already are, having this mindset that we're not afraid to talk about those kinds of things. So have I given you a thorough understanding of quality in this video? I would say the answer is no. What I've done is just touched the surface. There's a whole language around quality. So if you work in the nuclear industry, for example, if you work in a manufacturing environment, there's going to be a whole language around what quality is, what it means to meet the requirements of a contract, what it means to serve customers in the best possible way. And you're going to want to dig into learning about that as it relates to the area of specialty that you are in. Who gets to define what a quality grilled cheese sandwich is? Well, you get to define that for yourself if you're the one ordering lunch. And maybe I go to a restaurant where they're known for producing an amazing, let's say, chicken parmesan. And I think, okay, because I've heard such great things about their chicken parmesan, I'm going to order it. Well, maybe it comes and the sauce is sweet and I'm not used to a sweet tomato sauce. Or maybe they've got an ingredient in it that I don't like. So I get to determine for myself what's quality for me. But in a workflow process at work, the people that I'm passing the baton to, they're the ones who get to define what quality looks like when it comes to them. So let me give you an example of that. I've worked with an organization that's responsible for, that does create coatings on metal coatings. And in their workflow process, when something is painted, they have to make sure that the painted item isn't resting on something else. It's able to dry without cracks or smears or streaks, drips in the paint, right? This makes sense. So if I'm responsible for doing the painting work and I put the items that I'm painting onto the drying rack incorrectly, and it causes a drip, a smear, or a problem with the paint surface, and then when I'm inspecting it, I gloss over that, but I go ahead and send the part on to the next place in the workflow process, they might send that part back to my paint department saying, hey, this wasn't done properly. So I need to have a way to inspect my own work based on the standard or the requirements that the next person in the flow process is going to understand. And this is why collaboration is so important. This is why co-creating and partnering with the people that we work with is so important. If it's possible to have someone who, when you pass the baton, you pass it to them, have them come and talk to you or your team about their needs and how they're going to use it. Maybe have them explain what happens if there's a drip, a smear in the paint process, why it impacts their ability to do their job. Hopefully, I've made it clear why I am so passionate about quality at work. When we create quality in our work, we create organizations where individuals can thrive and we create great things in the world. Join me on this adventure to have a commitment to be someone who produces high quality work in everything we do. My goal in this video was to introduce you to the concept of what is quality at work. I would love your questions, your comments. What do you now realize or understand about quality that you didn't know before you started watching the video? Put your comments below, put your questions below. Would love a thumbs up if you liked this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.